Welcome to Voodoo Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of Skater XL. I played it on the Xbox One. It's also available on the PS4, but from what I understand, you shouldn't play it anywhere besides the PC. Am I wearing an apron? Yes. Why am I wearing an apron? Because this shit's about to get messy. Honestly, if I had a green one, I'd throw it on because I feel like I'm about to go like Dexter Morgan on this game. So, Skater XL is like a skateboarding simulator game. It's been on Steam in early access form for a while. That being said, it's now on the Xbox One and PS4, and there's no like story mode or like campaign or anything like that to get into. Each level has some challenges and stuff, but really there's just a lot of free skating going on. So we'll jump into the audio, and first off is the soundtrack, which, I mean, I don't really hate any of the music that is being played. It's a lot of like indie rock stuff, but it's just way too mellow. I mean, I don't mind it, but there are definitely times where I would like something, you know, that would actually pick up the pace, pick up the beat, you know, and get me going. As for the sound effects, I think the sound effects are decent. There's not too many of them. There's not a lot going on in the world around the game, so it's really just the skateboarding sound effects and a soundtrack that I didn't find particularly satisfying. So let's get into the gameplay mechanics and whatnot, and this is also going to include the controls this time because they kind of go very hand in hand. What makes this game kind of unique is that it's a skateboarding simulator and you use the left stick and the right stick to control your left foot and right foot. And I mean, I have seen that done before, but not to the same extent. Tony Hawk's Project 8 allowed you to do that in certain situations, but this game just goes full with it. I mean, when it comes to literally even ollieing or doing a nollie, you do it based on each foot. So that's very much a controls element, but it also really affects the gameplay and whatnot. And why it affects that, first off, is you don't really get to choose your skater's stance. Well, you can from the options menu, but it doesn't mean shit for the tutorials or for the challenges. And most of the challenges help teach you what you're doing, teach you different tricks, teach you how to chain tricks together, things like that. And then obviously the challenges become more advanced in each level, etc. The problem being, I used to skateboard and was goofy-footed, so I wanted my guy to be goofy-footed, but all the challenges were done in regular stance, so my brain was being taught in regular stance for this video game, so when I tried to free skate goofy, it was all completely backwards, and it was just kind of a mess. So that's just kind of trash to begin with, the fact that you can't do all of that shit from the goofy stance. Then you've got the fact that, I mean, the levels are essentially empty. There's really nothing going on. It's just an empty level and a bunch of challenges you can complete, but they're done in a really shitty way. They don't always work. I had one where I needed to kickflip into a nose manual, and I 100% did that, and it claimed I didn't, and that happened to me repeatedly. But then there are also ones where they're like, hey, you need to do that on this gap, you need to do an indie grab over a gap, and then you just land it, and you don't even clear the gap, and it's like, okay, good job, you've passed it. So sometimes they screw you out of it, sometimes they give it to you, and quite frankly, you just have to do the tricks they tell you to do. You don't have to do them in the place they're telling you to do them. I mean, if you stray too far from that area, yeah, it'll restart you, but I had to do another chain of tricks, and I didn't do them on the object they told me to, and I still passed it. It just doesn't make sense. This game doesn't do what it's telling you to do. You can pass or fail, and it just doesn't live up to what it's doing. But beyond that, there's just basically no content. There's the few levels that there are, and that's about it. And there's no real need to go and play them because they all work essentially the same and not particularly well. There's also just a plethora of weird glitches, like I rode off of a wall and like literally down a garbage can, and just weird stuff like that, or floating above my board, or my guy landed and he just completely disappeared. I mean, there were so many weird things happening that they just started to merge together into a giant ball of flaming garbage. And now we're going to blend the controls and gameplay mechanics again together, because when you're doing challenges, the things they show you to do, you don't always need to do with the controls, and quite frankly, the controls don't always do them. And what I mean is, when you're flicking those sticks around, you will do it exactly as it shows you, and it will have you do like a kickflip that you weren't supposed to do, and it just doesn't work. Which bleeds more into the controls. They're horribly laid out. I mean, they're really just not well thought out controls. Like, having to hold down the left trigger and the left bumper and fuck around with the sticks at the same time is just weird and uncomfortable. It's not really a particularly pleasant way to play the game. And there are plenty of tricks where that's what you need to do, and it doesn't always work. It just doesn't. And by that I mean the controls are not particularly responsive. There are times where they're overly sensitive and they'll have you doing tricks that you weren't trying to do, but then there are other times where you did the exact movements and the game's just like, nah, fuck you, you didn't do that. So eventually that just starts to get incredibly frustrating when you're doing what it's telling you to do and it's just not responding appropriately. And let's not forget, because every single button and the sticks are used for some sort of manipulation, whether it's pumping, spinning, grabbing the board, you have zero camera control. You can turn your character, which turns the camera, but really you have no other camera control beyond that, which even when you're free skating then makes it very difficult to set up the line that you necessarily want to set up because you can't aim yourself in the way you want to very easily. I'm not going to name names, but there are definitely skateboarding games that, while they may have been a bit more arcadey than this, they do pretty much everything this game's trying to do far better. Like, I understand that it is meant to be a simulator, but when you're using every control in this aspect, it takes away from the game element that's supposed to be there. So basically, lacks content, what content is there doesn't really work, and the controls are trash. Unique concept, but trash. Which then leads us to the final subject, which is the visuals, which are also trash. The people all look weird and semi-cel shaded, which doesn't really fit in the world, which doesn't look cel shaded. But they also just look vaguely humanoid. They're supposed to be humans, and they do look vaguely humanoid, but they don't look right. Just, they don't. But beyond that, the world you are in, the textures and whatnot are horrid. I mean, we're talking like PS1, early PS2, horrible flat texture shit. I will say it's at least a fairly bright and colorful game, which is enjoyable, but it's not a pretty thing to look at. And like I said, there are a bunch of weird visual glitches. So to wrap this up, we're talking about a game that has almost no content, doesn't work properly, like spawning into a level and not being able to pump your skateboard, and just the plethora of other things I ran into, and I couldn't even capture them all. But it has at its core a cool concept. It's just so poorly executed that it shouldn't exist. Maybe not necessarily not exist, because from what I understand, there's a cool modding community on the PC, and they've made a lot of improvements to what's there. The problem is, that doesn't exist on the PS4 and Xbox One, so releasing it on those platforms is just shitting on them. It doesn't do them any favors, it doesn't do the game any favors, and I say it and do the air quotes like that because, well, it's not really a game, it's more like a tech demo. At best, it's early access, but honestly, it feels more like a tech demo, and quite frankly, like the cover art should read like Skater XL, it's a fucking tech demo. So obviously, to wrap this up, if you're paying anything more than like $5 for this, you're paying too much. This is exactly one of those games that should have been left in early access till it actually became a real game, rather than launching as a title and then just falling apart and being trash. So no, I'm not going to recommend this. I recommend you avoid this at all costs. Which, I mean, that should be easy because it literally costs you nothing to avoid this game. Okay, so in the comments down below, why don't you tell me, what game do you think should have been left in early access? This is definitely among them because I've been dying for a good skateboarding game, and man, I'm still waiting. As always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button, and if you like what I'm doing in general, share, subscribe. Have a good one.